It's on? Sandy's taking care of it. She's there. We're good. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. Wow, everyone. Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Printerverse. Welcome to day 2 of Graph Expo. Hope everybody's having a great time. We just had a couple of great sessions here this morning. Market Your Printing Company with Mary Beth Smith. And HP did a launch in our booth and had some lunch in here. It was great. Inkjet Technology. You should check out their booth if you're here, and definitely online if you're home. Speaking of great, it's a privilege for me to be able to have Daniel Dejan agree to present for us today. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to see him live, and now there's a double bonus here because you can be in the booth live or you could be at home watching him live. He has agreed to talk to us today about selling print in an integrated world. Without further ado, because I want to make sure he gets to say everything he wants to say, the man, the myth, the legend, Daniel Dejan.
Oh, God. How you doing? One more time, with feeling. Okay. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to move relatively quickly, but I'll make sure that you have access to the deck because there's a lot of, I think, some great slides and great images that you're going to want to have. I want to start with probably one of the most important quotes that I've seen in a number of years, and this was, I actually stole this with permission from Andy Paparazzi, but I felt that it was such a meaningful quote, and it really spoke so much to what is happening in our time right now. You cannot use being busy as an excuse for not getting better. And why would I share this in today's conversation? I cannot tell you how many times, I mean, most of you know I travel extensively. I cannot tell you how many times I'm doing a sales presentation or I'm doing an educational presentation for a printer. I'm being sponsored by a printer for their clients, and I'll turn to the manager of sales or the director of sales, and I'll say, how many of your salespeople are attending today? And it'll be a ridiculous few. And I'll say, well, why don't we have more of your salespeople here with their customers, so that you have a unified language? And invariably they give me the same reason, which is, well, they're busy. They're out there, they're selling. And my question, which is an honest question, is, why would you want to go out and sell at the margins that we're selling to today, rather than trying to figure out how to evolve your business to be able to make money? Because the reality is, if you look at what's happening, unfortunately our industry, there are way too many printers who are trying to run a business on an extraordinarily slim margin. We've allowed the customers to do this to us as an industry, but I certainly think we're trying to take back so much. Sure, I can talk loud. So I wanted to start with this because I felt that it would really set a tone and a mood for what we're going to be talking about. I'll share with you very quickly. There are a lot of different formulas, I think, for being able to optimize sales, to be able to build a better business. This is just one of the spokes in the wheel. I think you can look at leaning your business in Six Sigma. I think you can look at new equipment and being able to use that as a way of having a very different offering. We're going to talk about a slightly different way of doing this. I love this quote. I happen, in fact, I am the futurist for SAPI. In the futurist community, this is the godfather. Alvin Toffler wrote a book over 35 years ago called Future Shock that really set a tone and a mood for the futurists to be able, not about science fiction, but about the science plausible, about the science marketable. And I love what he says here when he says the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but it'll be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I would like to sort of ask the question, in that equation of learn, unlearn, relearn, which do you think is the most expensive, and which do you think is the hardest? And the truth of it is the unlearning. You know, it is getting people to modify a behavior from what they have had and learn new skills and learn new and evolved thinking that takes them out into the marketplace to the same customer base, but in a completely different way. I would share with you very sincerely, you know, the fact that the idea that if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. And the fact of it is, we all know we can't afford to run a business on what we've gotten. We've got to be able to augment and add and amend to what we're doing because we're losing market share to print. That's a guarantee. SAPI just finished an 18-month market research deep dive that I've been touring called Print and one of the first things that we've said after 18 months of research, unfortunately, the print market is in fact going to constrict. But the beauty of it is that the upside, we're going to lose printers, but you're going to have printers inheriting their business. It's an extraordinary opportunity. More importantly, I think what happens is that those printers that are here are going to be given an opportunity to do much more elevated work at a much higher margin, very much to everybody's profit. So I'm just going to do this very quickly, and I don't want to belabor this, but I think it's important for us just to have a sense of where we are and where we're going. You'll notice on this that the date is 2010, and it says participation in the recovery ahead will not be about growing with the market. It will not be about waiting for clients to rediscover the power of print, for competitors to fail, or for the economy to make everything right. In fact, it will not be about waiting at all. It will instead be about understanding what's happening in our industry and aggressively getting in front of it. That was said 5 years ago. So we look at what's happened now 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and you'll notice it's almost exactly the same statement. There will not be anything fair or inclusive about the upturn ahead. It will not be, it will not solve anyone's problems, get things back to the way it used to be, or widen our margin for error. To the contrary, this upturn will heartlessly divide those who are prepared for what our industry is becoming from those who are unprepared. The question every one of us asks is, what are we doing to get on the right side of the divide? So that was 3 years ago. We're still saying, boy, this economy's kicking our ass. That's a technical term you can use any time, by the way. And we're not sure how we should really be evolving. So now we're starting to move up, and all of a sudden we start seeing something that's very clear. The commercial printing industry is not simply changing, it is being redefined. It is becoming something fundamentally different from what it was, creating historic opportunities for the prepared and profound threats for the unprepared, no matter how big, how established, or successful the unprepared have been. And the point I'm trying to reach here is, for the longest time, we have had a large portion of the print community who kept waiting for the economy to come back and who felt that once the economy came back, they would get their fair share. And the reality is, those printers who did not market, those printers who did not advertise, those printers who, in fact, were not proactive about staying in front of their customers with a very solid, positive message, are the ones that are closing down now. They never set, a stage for their customers to have the confidence that they needed. So I'm not going to, as many of you know, as a futurist, I really love disruptive technology. I wanted to take you here and just sort of qualify, where are we? So interestingly enough, and this is a real short list, obviously, you could add things like variable data, which is really a disruptive technology. Certainly the technology of things like quick response codes, augmented reality, etc. But what I wanted to take you to is this. The idea that where we're at right now, when we looked at coming out of the dot-com revolution, it was the digitalization of communications. We were essentially selling what we would call the World Wide Web. We were selling the hardware, the software that essentially brought the web available to everybody, which was great, okay? It opened up the world. I would share with you that most of the futurists would tell you the World Wide Web 2.0, the ability to upload video, music, entertainment, education, that's when the world went flat. That was probably one of the most important times for us because it really did change how we did what we did, very much like desktop publishing. Where I'm leading you is this. We went through the digitalization of communications. It changed the way that most corporations worked. In fact, there was one of the largest myths that came out of this, which was when we looked at the end of the dot-com revolution, you had all of these corporations who basically said, I'm not going to print anymore, everything's going to go online. The return on investment with digital is so much better than print, and it took us almost a decade to understand the cost of entry is less expensive, but the cost of maintenance is incredibly high. That cost can be overwhelming for most companies. To wit, and I'm just going to do this very quickly, how often do you have to update a website before you start to lose your customers? If you are a website that talks about current events or press releases or whatever, obviously every day. Most corporations, the date really is about every 3 to 4 days. You know, to have a webmaster that in fact is reading enough blogs, reading enough, trade materials to be able to cut and paste and keep a website lively is expensive. Let me take it to the next step, which is far more interesting. If you send out a correspondence in social media and people respond to that correspondence, how quickly do you have to acknowledge their response before they think it's robotic? Half hour. If it's not responded to by a human or an acknowledgement that says, thank you so much, we've received your whatever, literally, the cost of having a team to do that is extraordinarily expensive. We have now come to realize, and in all the research we did, that quite frankly, print has a superb ROI. In fact, the print ROI is right in the middle of all the media. The least expensive, of course, being email, but it's the one that unfortunately gets the lowest hits and the lowest response rates. Where I want to take you, though, is this. Where are we now? And it is the democratization of communications. It is the fact that you have got all of these extraordinarily large, powerful communication corporations, telecommunication corporations, software, hardware corporations who have put out a number of different software and hardware programs that have led the public to believe that if they buy that hardware and software, they too can become professional photographers, professional illustrators, professional designers, public relations agents. Does that make sense? Okay? And what I would share with you that is the really the biggest ramification of this is that in the democratization of communications, it has absolutely erased the line between professional and amateur. Amateurs do believe they can do a professional job with the assistance of the right hardware and software. And the fact of it is they cannot. I mean, quite frankly, why don't we just, in fact, crowdsource everything? I do a lot of speeches to colleges, and there's nothing more conflicting than in talking to a group of design students or production students and being able to say, why do I need you? There's a hardware, or a software program, there's an app for that, and the fact of it is, no, there isn't. We really have to be very clear with our customers that there is, in fact, a very, very distinct line between amateur and professional. And very quickly, sort of to give you a distillation, what is the difference is, in fact, when we become a professional, whether we go to a trade school or we go to a college or we actually do an apprenticeship, first we get the benefit of mentors. They give us the legacy of the history of our trade. They give us the legacy of their experience. Most importantly, they teach us a process that is predictable and repeatable. So in fact, once we are comfortable with that process, we can in fact be creative or be productive 24/7 because we know exactly what are the questions we should be asking, how do you get the process started, and how do we move along. This is an important aspect to our conversation today, which is in fact the biggest distinction that printers will make in terms of where they lie in the larger market is going to be through education, through mentoring, the ability for printers to make a difference in how their customers do what they do, to impact their quality, speed, price equation. How do I increase the quality? How do I shorten the throughput? How do I, in fact, take it upon myself to find ways to be able to decrease the cost? Things like pre-flighting can be incredibly effective ways of increasing quality and bringing down the cost of files having to be checked. If a printer knows that you can just give them a pre-flight report and they can read it and know that, oh, all I have to do is fix this, this, and this, and I'm done, rather than going into it as if it's a black cave. So here's the interesting thing. I always like to make this statement. There's a wonderful group that has done a lot of research called Peppers and Rogers. And one of the things that they talked about, they did a survey approximately 7 years ago to find out what's the best way to build a brand, build brand loyalty, and build customer relations. And 7 years ago, in fact, it was a website and direct mail. That staying in touch with customers, using direct mail, giving them information, etc., was very, very important. And then it could be augmented with going to the website of that company. They redid that survey several years ago, and what they found out, direct mail is still incredibly important as a primary way of staying in contact with your customers, but websites have now been replaced by social media. Why? Because social media works in real time. Which begs the larger question, and I would share with you, you'll probably hear this from many, many speakers who are here, that absolute necessity for printers to be involved in having a Twitter presence, a Facebook presence, a LinkedIn presence, a Pinterest presence, because that is where their customers are. That is where your customers are hanging. Now, I'll share with you, that actually reflects 2012. This is just one small aspect. This is social TV, as you could see it in 2013. It keeps growing. It keeps expanding. As you can see, there's a lot more companies. Let me share with you that if you look at this chart, and this is just social TV, just to be on that chart, tens of millions, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent in R&D, in beta testing, in market research, focus study, launch, capital investment, fundraising. What I want to share with you is this. And we did a survey. We actually went in and we spoke to the majority of these companies. 65% of all of these companies used print to launch their companies. Now, to be honest and full disclosure, they launched the company. Once they saw their trend line starting to take off and they realized that it had clicked, they never had to use print again. That's not their medium. But I use this as an extreme example about social TV using print. And here's an interesting thing, just a quick sidebar, as you know I love sidebars. Sidebar, I've done this presentation for a lot of printers in a closed session, and I would ask them the question, are you, the print salespeople, calling on web designers? And they would look at me like, dude, they're web designers. And the point that I'm making is the best way to launch a brand is through direct mail. It is through magazine advertising, inserts, blow-ins. It's a great way of getting that visibility and credibility. And most of these, if you look at like all of the major cable channels, they all use print to launch. If you look at a lot of the social TV networks, they all use print to launch. They don't continue using it, but they know that magazine advertising and direct mail are singularly the two strongest ways of being able to get to a targeted audience, period. If I want to talk to 17-year-old cheerleaders, if I want to talk to guys who only work on Indian motorcycles, if I want to talk to moms who knit, if I want to talk to dog owners who only own small breeds, there's a magazine for that. And the beauty of it is, if I compile enough of the magazines that my target audience reads, I now have a perfect direct mail list that I can use to talk to them. And what am I going to do? I'm immediately going to invite them to my website. I'm going to ask them to fill out a small profile. I'm going to ask them to volunteer their email address. Because the fact of it is, part of the reason that email doesn't work as well as it should is that we have to keep in mind email is a permission-based communication system. If you do not get the person to volunteer their email, they will shut you down. They will delete you. There's a spam filter. There's a firewall that will not let you get in. As soon as they volunteer their email and they make that connection, now it becomes a very valid mode of communication. So I want to show you that because I thought it was really interesting. And one of the things, if you'll notice at the bottom, I just highlighted it, and I'm sorry about the contrast, and we're in some pretty bright lights, but what it says is the customer is what drives the destination of which mediums to use and the decision. My point is this. The fact of it is, voice of the customer has singularly become one of the most important techniques for us to know where our customers are. The best way for us is if we are on Twitter, if we are on Facebook, if we're on LinkedIn, and we're talking to our customers in real time, and we can ask them a question like, what's your favorite magazine? What do you do with your spare time? What websites do you go on? All of a sudden you start to see a lot of the patterns that says, this is where you should be spending your time, this is where you should be spending your money. So I wanted to show you this real quickly. When we talk about disruptive technology, these are the websites that were each and every one a disruptive technology. They completely changed how we did what we did. Google changed everything. Because the fact of the matter is, if all of a sudden we have access to all of this information in the world, how do you find it? You have to have somebody that has created a search engine that lets you find it. Okay? But eBay, YouTube, Wikipedia, Amazon, Facebook, Blogger, Pandora, Yahoo, Craigslist, all of these changed commerce, communication, brick and mortar forever. In fact, more interestingly, if you look at this, in the this is a world list of the most popular websites. Again, and by the way, Google's not in this because they created the survey themselves. But look at it again: Facebook, Yahoo, YouTube, Amazon, MSN Live, Wikipedia, eBay, Bing. It immediately begs the question: are you sharing that space with your customers? Are you there? And that starts to become so much more important when we try to figure out, how do I get to my customers? I love asking the question. If you are a print salesperson and you want to get to an audience and be able to have a rapport with them, and that audience is, say, between 25 and 35, what's the best way of getting to that audience? Text them. They're not going to answer the phone. They're not going to read their emails because they're so swamped. But the amazing thing is, if you text them, they are always looking for text messages. And if you've got a problem and you need to talk to them, it's so easy to be able to send a tweet to say, having a problem, need to talk to you, call me, quickly resolved. Now they'll call you. What's going on? You've got their attention. If you try to call them and say, I need to talk to you, I've got this problem, I'm sending you an email with an attachment so that you can look at it, it's not going to happen. The market doesn't work in that speed anymore. It works so much faster than that. So I like this one because this actually is a reflection of what's happening in the USA. But again, look at it. Facebook, Yahoo, YouTube, Amazon, MSN Live, Wikipedia. I mean, basically the same list. It's telling us where our customers are spending the most of their time. It's in social media, and it is in personal gratification. If you're not familiar with Peppers & Rogers, down at the bottom is the website, one-to-one-media.com. I cannot recommend this website strongly enough. These are, in fact, global thought leaders in direct marketing and direct mail. They actually created and coined the terms like voice of the customer. They've got a whole book on voice of the customer. They actually created a book called Lifetime Value, where they talked about the fact that we really need to be very concerned right now about how much time we spend prospecting versus how much time we actually spend in customer relations. By the way, quick sidebar, in the United States right now, we spend 26 times the amount in prospecting than we do in customer retention. 26 times. This tells us immediately where our opportunities lie. I will tell you immediately what the challenge is. How do we, in fact, do customer relations? If you stop and think about it, it takes social networking, it takes a website, it takes a newsletter, it takes direct mail. If you go to the powers that be and say, these are the tools that we need to be able to have customer relations, the first question they're going to ask you is, how much is that going to cost? And if you give them a glimpse of what it's going to cost, they'll immediately say, we can't afford it. They would rather spend their money on prospecting. And the problem at this point is the lifetime value of most customers is getting so short, you cannot amortize the cost of prospecting long enough to get your money back. We lose customers too quickly. There's too much competition. Everybody's got a better deal. So how do you make that change? Well, here's the interesting thing. I love this list, by the way. It's Rich Prince who did this list. If your audience wants immediate gratification, if they're looking for immediate response and immediate interaction, then amazingly enough, social media is the best way for you to be able to communicate to them. If they're pressed for time but they can wait for a response, then interestingly enough, email and web is probably the best way for you to be able to communicate. If they want a true deep understanding, if this is a major purchase, if this is something that really is going to have a long-lasting effect, and they really want to make a wise decision, then in fact, print and web is going to be the best way. Here's the key. During the course of a day, our customers are doing all of this. They want immediate gratifications. In some cases, they've got some time. They want to do some due diligence. In other cases, it's very important. They want as much information. We have to be able to fulfill each of these needs. We have to be able to fulfill the social media need. We need to be able to fulfill the email web need. We very much need to be able to fulfill the print and web need. So that said, I don't know, this circulated for quite a while, but it was a cartoon that really struck me because I felt it was such an extraordinary reflection of where so many companies are right now. As you can see, the owner of the company or the head of the company is basically saying, you know, what do our clients want? Do they want us to be marketing providers? Do they want to, well, you know, we're printers. That's what we do. And the fact is, this company will not be here in a year. 18 months outside. They're not fulfilling the need of the market, and we know that. So this starts to bring up the larger point. What do we need to do to be able to sell in an integrated market is we need to be able to participate in the integrated marketing. We need to be able to have those social media accounts and establish ourselves as experts. We need to be able to help our clients know who we are better and to give them information that they can use that is going to change how they do, what they do, and more than anything, it also gives us a chance to be able to understand where we lie in the larger market itself. To that end, I'll just read this real quickly. Social media, blogging, search engine optimization, email marketing are powerful ways of developing online leads for most businesses. However, it's your business and your company's website where your prospect makes a buying decision and the sale actually takes place. Does that make sense? With a website, if it's well designed, it's got good navigation, you can talk about company history, you can talk about your process, you can have your equipment list, you can do videos, you can do all kinds of things. Social media is for socializing. It's the day-to-day that we do with our customers. How should we be able to use this? And in fact, I think we want to be able to capture some things that I think are paramount. The most trusted method of information right now is word of mouth. Period. Therefore, testimonials and capturing testimonials must be a day-to-day endeavor. Anytime we have a good job, anytime we've done something that's positive for a customer, we should be able to graciously ask them, would you mind just saying a positive word or two about the last project that we did together? We'd love to be able to use it for marketing. And I will share with you that in most cases, they're more than happy to do it. Parenthetically, what they're going to say is, I'd rather you not use my name, but you can use my title. I'd rather you not use my company name, but you can use my industry. No problem. So I can say, Vice President of Marketing from an aero technical, manufacturing company. Good enough. Capture those. Testimonials become the most important thing that you have. Case studies, absolutely. If it's an important case study, you should have somebody within your company who can write it up as a paragraph that says, here was the conflict, here was the challenge, here's how we chose to resolve it, here was the resolution, this was the benefit. We were able, and always think about it from a quality, speed, price equation. We were able to increase their quality, therefore changing the way they were viewed in the market. We were able to save them time in throughput. We were able to save them money in the cost of their piece itself. So videos, I cannot recommend videos enough. I actually have a whole seminar just on printers using video as a part of their way. I will tell you, it's so easy to be able to send a customer a quick email with an attachment with a short 3 to 5 minute video. Educational video, case study video, testimonial videos. This is the kind of stuff that people love to see. The use of multimedia becomes absolutely mandatory. Anyway, that said, this really is, I think, an appropriate outlook on really where we are right now as printers. The fact that we're looking for video, we're looking for near-field communications, being able to use display ads, social, location, SMS, all of these become incredibly important ways for us to be able to contact our customers or have our customers contact us. So what do we need now? I cannot emphasize, and I said this is just one spoke of a larger wheel, but I think a very, very important spoke. Mentoring now is more important than ever before. In fact, I just have a blog that came out on our microsite at www.sappyetc.com, and this week's blog is on the importance of mentoring, of the fact of our being able, first of all, to mentor the people we bring into our company as apprentices or entry level. More importantly, our ability to mentor our customers. Our ability to help them learn how to create good files, how to create a PDF, what is color management, what is, in fact, quite frankly, true and honest pre-flighting. Where does it start? Because pre-flighting actually starts at the company, not at the printer. Why would you want to mentor? Obviously, the visibility and credibility is so very, very important. I would share with you, you'll notice that I've got question marks, parentheses around a question mark around loyalty. I will share with you, if you can really make an impact on your client and help their quality, speed, price equation, you will have loyalty. I would share anytime somebody comes back to you and buys from you again, that is a sign of loyalty. But the fact of it is, loyalty as we know it is being redefined. And we need to be very clear about that. I would share that for most of our customers, the way that they have redefined loyalty is that they will give you last look. Stop and think about it. 5, 7, 8 years ago. If you change somebody's specs to be able to optimize the job to save them money or time, if you built dummies, if you gave them paper samples, if you did all that, job was pretty much yours. Now you do the same thing. You change the specs to optimize the job. They'll share the specs with competitive printers. They feel that getting paper dummies or samples is a part of what you should be doing, but it does not guarantee the loyalty anymore. So, why would we want to do this? And the takeaway in our entire session today, in our conversation today, is that comment right there. The single most important endeavor of everybody in your company is to be perceived by your customer as a business asset. If you are not perceived as a business asset, then you are a vendor. And if you are a vendor, it is about price. Does that make sense? That's the truth. I will tell you, I think singularly the most important marketing technique right now is in fact the lunch and learn. The ability to get into a company in a non-solicitous way and take on topics, and I'll show you a whole series of topics in a second, but to be able to take on topics that are going to impact how they do what they do and impact their quality, speed, price equation. Very noticeably. If you've done that and you are viewed as a business asset, price will no longer be the only conversation that they will have. They'll pick up the phone to ask you, what's the best way of doing a job? What paper would you recommend? You know, could you check my specs on this if this is going to be optimal on press? The more I can do that, the more I am a business asset. Let me give you a quick sidebar and a quick story. This goes back many, many years ago. I was at a major healthcare company. I was one of the creative executives. I had my print salespeople, one of my print salespeople call me up early in the morning, and said, "Did you just see the acquisition of your competition who just bought so-and-so?" And I went, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Well, check this out." And he had already cut out an article, this is many years ago, cut out an article in one of the trade publications and faxed it to me. It was waiting for me. I was so impressed by the fact that he was reading my trade publication and knew who my competitor were, and that they had just made a major acquisition, that from that moment on I could no longer think of him as a print salesperson. I thought of him as a business asset. He understood my business. He understood what I was going through on a day-to-day basis, and it wasn't about what paper I was choosing or how it was about what was happening in my industry right now. That said, believe me, I have to emphasize this. If you are not perceived by your customers as a business asset, you will be perceived as a vendor. If you are perceived as a vendor, the conversation then becomes about price. And that's it. It becomes literally one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional at most. So, you know, I love this, which, you know, again, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Now, this was originally said, amazingly enough, was originally said by the former president of Harvard almost 100 years ago. It was popularized, in fact, by Thomas Watson Jr., who was the CEO of IBM, when he was called on the floor by the board of directors saying, "We're spending an enormous amount of money training our salespeople. They're trying to sell computers." I mean, imagine, this was a complex sale. And the board of directors thought you were just going to walk in with a briefcase and a couple of brochures and ta-da. And he set them straight. He said, we've got to, if this is such a complex sale, we've got to make sure that our salespeople are articulate, knowledgeable, and are business assets. And they were very much, and that was in fact why Big Blue did as well as it did. Here's the interesting thing. I'm not going to talk about the top too much, but I will share with you, we're in a very precarious time right now. And the precariousness is this. You have a customer. They're costing you a lot of money. They're costing you a lot of money because they're sending you files that are corrupt, badly built, have got problems. Well, let me put it to you this way. Interestingly enough, 10 years ago, GATF did a survey asking printers, large, medium, and small, of all the files that you receive, what percentage can you rip without having to edit, manipulate, or in fact rebuild that file? And back then, the number was 49%, 1 out of every 2 files. They redid that same survey 5 years later, and 49% went up to 57%. The reason being is, quite frankly, you have these very large software companies that give people the confidence that if they buy their software, install it, it's going to address all of the issues. The solutions are there, but you have to know the questions to ask. It's the difference between the professional and the amateur. So my point is this. So if a printer now were to go to a customer and say, you know the files that you've been sending us, we've been having some problems with them, what do you think the customer would say? None of my other printers are having problems with my files. Right? And the fact of the matter is, if you're having, we're all running such a similar equipment. If you're having a problem, everybody's having a problem. And the point of it is, why would you want to, in fact, be involved in mentoring? First and foremost is to be able to protect your margin. Because I love asking the question, how many files do you have to fix in order to rip? And are you charging your customers back to fix their files? And if you're not, in some way or another, the problem is you're eroding your margin. So here's the interesting thing. Very quick list down at the bottom. Protecting your margin and profitability. Lunch and Learns, education, mentoring on such topics as pre-flighting, preparing PDFs, color management workflow, profiles, project management, scheduling. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I say that, so many printers are like, I'm not I'm not a presenter, I'm not every company, every major company that's out on that floor has got somebody like me. I work for SAPI. I represent SAPI. It's a paper company, but the fact of it is, I travel 200 days I'm a G7 expert, so I talk color management, file preparation, direct mail, paper choices, woo-hoo, and when we do all of that, we're really helping to be a business asset and impacting our customers' quality, speed, and price equation. There are people out there who will be more than happy to do a lunch and learn for you. It doesn't have to be solicitous. It can be strictly academic. People know who you work for. If you have handouts and you do a good job, they'll remember. So here's very quickly a quick scenario, and I'm going to take you through. Do you all remember typographers? I'm looking around the room. Most of you don't. All right. Some of us do. But there were typographers, and you sent out to get your type, and they sent you galleys, etc., right? And then, of course, we then had access, once we started desktop publishing, we had access to 20,000 fonts, and all of a sudden we deemed ourselves typesetters. It's like, So the question that's begged is, what happened to the typographers? Some of them went out of business. A lot of them didn't. If you remember back then, they had these output units, very expensive to put out galleys, and with a small modification, they could in fact turn those output units into rips. And those rips could take discs, files, jazz, Bernoullis, and actually convert RGB to CMYK and give you either hard copy or film that you could print. So the interesting thing is, what happened is, in fact, those typographers made the necessary conversion, and they in fact became a service bureau. The service bureaus became so implicit in our workflow that, amazingly enough, they were either acquired by printers and became their pre-press departments, or more interestingly, the typographers bought presses and they themselves became really wonderful printers. I would share with you, we are exactly in the same situation today. With most printers, their presses are no longer their major asset. It is their largest liability in terms of financial liability, but it's not their greatest asset. Their greatest asset is, in fact, their pre-press or their pre-media department. Because the beauty of it is we have a standardized handshake, which is PDF format. It used to be PostScript and then PostScript 2. Now we have PDF and the versions of PDF. My point, it always comes to you that way. And amazingly enough, there are programs available today. Idea Alliance, who's downstairs, Graphic Arts Technical Foundation, Ryerson, RIT, they all have programs that can take a pre-press person and teaching them conversion languages like XML, XMPy, EPUB, etc., will allow them to take any PDF file and be able to then, in fact, to prepare to go on web, to go for social, to go for mobile, to create apps. This is exactly where we are at in a communication era. What that does for a printer is, in fact, allows them to be what they say they want to be: a media hub, sales and marketing support, communication resources. Busy slide. I'm going to do it real quickly, but stop and look at it this way. We started in offset printing, whether it was sheet or fed, sheet or web, and then, interestingly enough, we figured out the variable data. Variable data is a disruptive technology that took us to digital. Digital, in fact, allowed us then to take that file and put it up on a website. The website allowed us to have that interaction with our clients to be able to expand to social. Social has allowed us to be able to interact to mobile, and ultimately, where does it take us? It allows us to then, in fact, go to tablets. All of the research that we have done has proven the same thing, which is, if you have any of these components working in league and you can cross-sell within that in your company, it'll sell print. A company comes to you for web assistance and then they find out that you can do direct mail. A company wants you to help them create an app and then they work backwards and then you're working on variable data for them. So my point is, this is the new print. I'm a designer. I spend all of my time there. There is never a document or a file that I create that is not intended to be repurposed, that is not expected to be able to be printed, to go online, to go out onto a tablet. Years ago, I had to go to a lot of different sources to be able to get that done. Now we have got these center points of communication where I can bring them a file in a PDF format and they can help me, in fact, do all that. Content is king. What we are learning is content is not free. So ultimately, where do we want to be? We want to be able to, in fact, be able to answer the question, why should you do business with me? What's it going to cost you not to do business with me? The second question, honestly, is the hardest. Being able to dollarize what it's going to cost you not to do business with me is always going to be the hardest. We've all know this equation. We've been talking about it. Quality, speed, price, pick any two, compromise the third. Our customers want all three. Let me suggest something to you that we'll talk about at some later date. Most of us have lost the ability to quantify quality. What makes my quality different from your quality? Why can I charge for my quality more than your quality? Once we're able to answer those questions, believe me, we'll be able to do so much more. Discounters are only as good as their last price. Consultative sellers are as good as their last improvement in customer profit and customer quality. That said, this is just a quick view of all of the different presentations I do. And if you go out onto the floor, you're going to find some extraordinary talent that can help you do it for your customers in their own topic. So, I'll leave you with this. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. So, you cannot use being busy as an excuse for not getting better anymore. Thank you. Take it away. By the way, very quickly, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, also our websites. Please help yourself.
Okay, before I jump in with all the questions that came from our audience watching on home stream, does anyone have any questions here in the audience? All right, some comments from the people at home. Yeah, was there a question? No, okay. All right, people loved it at home. We got a lot of amen and attaboys, so people loved your message and agreed with a lot of your profound statements. One of the things that came up was, as printers have, a lot of printers over the years have adjusted their workflows due to lean manufacturing and some of these other things. It seems like they should be very adaptable to correcting on the fly in this new reality. Can you talk about maybe lean and ISO and how it's led into this?
Very, very different disciplines. Very. You have disciplines that are actually being propelled by the financial branch of a company. The whole concept of leaning, how do I get my operational costs as low as possible to increase what looks like my profitability? And then you have a completely different endeavor that's happening from the marketing end of how do I reach my customers, how do I speak to my customers, how do I prospect, how do I keep my customers? Very different endeavors. They're both positive. They should both be done. If possible, we should be talking about, within the company about what are we doing to make ourselves a better company? How do we optimize our company? But they're very different disciplines and should not be confused. Sometimes they're like, I hear from people, well, we've done Six Sigma. Why aren't I getting more customers? Because Six Sigma is not a marketing tool. It is an operational tool. So.
Very good. We talked about how customers are kind of babied by their printers in terms of we fix their files, we don't charge them for it, we don't often even tell them. Is there any social benefit to empowering our customers?
No.
No social benefit,
no.
Okay.
Because the problem is it's not the kind of benefit that you can go and talk to them about so that it's acknowledged as a benefit. Let me put it this way, which I think makes it very clear. I owned a studio for 20 years in the Chicagoland area. I remember getting the 2 o'clock call. I don't have the photo. I don't have the font. And we can fix it and we'll have to charge you for it. Or you can bring it in and you lose the time. But they would charge you for changes or corrections or editing or modifying. What has happened is as printers were trying to become more competitive, they gave that away. We did it to ourselves. Right now, we're trying to recapture the reins that we dropped.
So we need to empower ourselves.
We need to empower ourselves, but we also need to be very clear that we need to be able to have that level of conversation with our customers. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. And you talked about Peppers and Rogers. Any other recommended resources for our audience?
Oh, God, yeah. Please go to my website, www.sappyetc.com, or contact me on my email. I will be happy because there are different sites based on what your focus is. I love Peppers and Rogers because it really is direct mail, direct marketing. But there are sites for the G7 site is fabulous. The Idea Alliance, certainly RIT has got great resources in the arena of direct mail. Certainly foldfactory.com, who'smailingwhat.com, but we don't.
Thank you.
Contact me. My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Amazing. People really loved it. Oh, seriously. I was kidding. A woman had to leave, but she wanted me to give you this. I made sure it was appropriate.
Okay. Let me